I'm gonna introduce a man who really needs no introduction. I mean, who here doesn't know our supervisor Scott? Welcome, Rex. Thank you for joining us today and helping us understand what's going on in Arizona politics and with the Board of Supervisors. Uh, I'm just gonna let you take it away. I understand you have a PowerPoint, so I am going
Yes.
to be running that for you. Do you
Great.
want to address the crowd a little bit before that, or you want me to
Sure,
start that
sure.
up?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everybody for your participation today. This, I think, is the second time in the last year that I've spoken with DGT, and the last time I spoke with you, I was in my office downtown. Now I'm in my dining room at home, and my wife loves it whenever I do a TV interview or a meeting because somebody will invariably say to her, "Terry, I saw your china cabinet and your husband." So happy to be here with all of you today, and just wanted to mention before we get into talking about the business of the county that next year is an election year, and the entire Board of Supervisors is up for election. We don't have staggered terms. All five of us are up for election in every presidential election year. And I have already filed a statement of interest and a statement of organization with the Division of Elections. So we'll start collecting signatures pretty soon. But I wanted you to think back, for those of you who were around in 1972. Think back to what you were doing in November of 1972. Myself, I was 9 years old. I was in fourth grade, and I was still living in my home state of Ohio. Well, November of 1972 was the last time a Democrat was elected to represent District 1. And that person only served one term. And then he was defeated by a Republican in 1976. And from 1976 until 2020, the Republicans held the District 1 supervisor seat. And then in 2020, we took it back. And we are going to keep it in the Democratic column in 2024. I'm committed to working as hard as I can to keep this seat in Democratic hands, and absolutely am going to need the help and guidance of everybody on this call and everybody throughout the Democratic Party, so that we can keep this seat in Democratic hands. I'm sorry that I missed your luau for Kirsten Engel, but I was recently a co-host for a house party for her in the home of folks I think you know well, Don and Mallory Rieger, and it was a terrific turnout for Kirsten, and that's another seat that we need to get back into Democratic hands. So, Mike, if you want to put the PowerPoint up. I'll start going through that. The PowerPoint that I shared with Mike, that I'm going to go through with all of you, is the same PowerPoint that we have used at all of our town halls. I will be doing my last town hall in the spring series of town halls tomorrow at Pima Community College's Northwest campus. And it'll be the 15th town hall that I've had since being elected. And it's always great to get out into the district and not only have town halls, but speak with community groups and homeowners associations and neighborhood groups. And so this is the PowerPoint that we use when we go through this. And you can see all of our email and phone number at the bottom of that slide. And go to the next one, Mike. This is our district map. It was redrawn after the 2020 census. The board is charged with redrawing supervisor district lines after every census. And believe it or not, we passed these new maps unanimously. Each one of us appointed a member to a redistricting commission. That commission worked with county staff to look at demographic and other data so that we could equalize population between the 5 districts, because that and making sure that the majority minority districts, which are District 2 and District 5, stay majority minority districts, which is complying with the Federal Voting Rights Act. We adopted the new maps unanimously. And if you watch the board, you know it's difficult to get a 5-0 vote out of the Board of Supervisors. So this is the map of our district. And I'm really pleased that as a result of redistricting, a district that when we were elected was marginally Republican is now marginally Democratic. It is still going to be the most competitive of the 5 districts because it's definitely the most purple. But the Republicans had a slight edge in voter registration in 2020. We now have a slight edge in voter registration as a result of redistricting. We also now have a City of Tucson precincts in our district. When I was elected, I was the only supervisor who had no Tucson precincts, but you can see them at the southern end of the map. And we also only have 1 Marana precinct in the district now, whereas when I was elected, 45% of the town of Marana was in District 1. The other thing I can tell you is that even though the districts have to be relatively close in terms of total population, District 1 has the largest number of registered voters. And voters in our district, as all of you probably know because of your activism, voters in our district turn out to vote. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, it is a high turnout district. You can go to the next slide. Oh, and before you go to the next slide, go back to the other one, Mike, I'm sorry. If a precinct, I'm sorry, this is a precinct map. If a precinct is in a shaded area, then it's an incorporated town or city. Marana, Oro Valley, or Tucson. If a precinct is in white, then it is in unincorporated Pima County. That's going to be important when we get further along into the presentation. Now you can go to the next slide. Thanks. In Arizona, counties are subdivisions of the state. That means that the only powers that we have are those that are vested in us either through the Arizona State Constitution or by the legislature via statute. The legislature can also pull back our powers, and they have certainly done that. They even set our salaries. The salaries, not just for the supervisors, but for all county elected officials, are determined by the legislature. I put the next bullet in quotes because it is a quote from the mayor of the city of Athens, Ohio, where I grew up. And I was a city councilman in Athens when I was in my 20s. And the mayor, who was a friend of my parents, actually, said, Rex, the essential role of government is making sure that all of the services and supports that we provide to our residents are the focus of all the work that we do. And I added to that when I became a county supervisor in 2020 by saying that those services and supports need to be delivered with an emphasis on equity, service, and respect for the public tax dollars entrusted to us. So that is not the essential role of government. It's not exactly glamorous or exciting sometimes, but it really is the main focus of what we do as a board. And the board is a policy-making entity. We do not get involved in day-to-day administration. We only hire 2 people, our clerk and the county administrator. And then it's the responsibility of the county administrator and the other employees of Pima County to implement the policies that the board puts in place. The most significant policy document that we pass on an annual basis is the county budget. And the current county budget is $1.9 billion. It's a little larger than it might normally be because we are still spending some of the pandemic relief funds that all local governments and state governments got from the federal government during the pandemic. We set the budgets not just for the departments that are overseen by appointed department heads like the transportation department, but we also set the budgets for elected officials, such as the county attorney, the county sheriff, and all the other independently elected officials. We also set the tax rates for 4 property taxes: the primary property tax, the secondary property tax that funds the library district, secondary property tax that funds the regional flood control district, and the secondary property tax that pays for our long-term debt. Although all of the county's long-term debt, its bonded indebtedness, is going to be paid off by the 27-28 fiscal year. And then oversight of the budget is an ongoing task of the board throughout the fiscal year. Constituent service is a big part of the work of our office. If you call our office and you've got some kind of problem or concern, we connect you with the county department that can best assist you in dealing with that problem or concern. And as soon as we do that, that really kicks it up to the top of the list of what that department is working on. And that's as it should be. That's the nature of representative democracy. Same thing would happen if you contacted your member of Congress or your member of the Arizona State Legislature to help you with some problem at the federal or state level. Pima County is really big. It is the size of a couple of the New England states. It is the 16th largest county in the United States. And however, that only makes it the 6th largest county in Arizona. If you look at the top 20 counties in the country in terms of geographic area, 6 of them are in Arizona, but Pima County is only the 6th largest. Coconino County is the biggest. Makes sense because that's where the Grand Canyon is. Coconino County is actually the 2nd biggest county in the United States. We are I'd encourage you at some point, if you've never have before, to go on the county's website, pima.gov, and take a look at the pages for some of the various departments and look at some of the work that they do. The county employs close to 7,000 people, so it's a significant workforce. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Mike. These are some of the departments that we work with the most. The planning and zoning. The Development Services Department advises not just the board on land use issues and code issues, but also advises the Planning and Zoning Commission and the boards of adjustment that are in each one of the supervisor districts. The Health Department is our 2nd largest department. The biggest one is the Sheriff's Department, and that makes sense because of all the area that those deputies have to cover, and also the administration of the Pima County Jail. But the Health Department is the 2nd largest department, and that is because under Arizona state law, counties are the public health authorities for their regions. There is no City of Tucson Health Department. There is no Town of Oro Valley or Town of Marana Health Department. There's just the Pima County Health Department. And it deals with a lot of issues in the areas of not just public health, but behavioral health, mental health. And again, that is a terrific website to look at if you want to learn more about what the health department does. We have an urban, suburban, and rural natural resources, parks, and recreation department. Not only do we have parks such as Arthur Pack Regional Park, which is next to Mountain View High School off of Thornydale Road, but we also have golf courses like Crooked Tree Golf Course that is right next to Arthur Pack Regional Park. We have athletic fields and pools and splash pads, but we also have trails. If you look at Tucson Mountain Park or Sweetwater Preserve, those are all under the auspices of this department. And of course, we have the Chuck Huckleberry Loop, which is nationally recognized and surrounds the city of Tucson and reaches into a lot of the cities and the towns as well. Transportation. The county is responsible, get ready for this, for over 2,200 miles of roadway. If a road is within the boundary of one of our 5 cities or towns, it's the responsibility of that city or town. If there is a state highway, such as Oracle Road, also known as State Highway 77, it's the responsibility of the Arizona Department of Transportation. But the county is responsible for the 2,200 miles of roadway that are within the unincorporated portions of the county. And as you saw from that map at the beginning of the presentation, most of District 1 is unincorporated. So a lot of the roads that the county is responsible for are in our district. The year before I ran for the Board of Supervisors, the previous board assessed the condition of our county's roads, and 20% of them were found to be in poor or failed condition. I'm sorry, 70% of them were found to be in poor or failed condition. They passed a program which we have continued to support to use both local and state funds to get all of those roads up to good condition by the end of this decade. We front-loaded repair because of favorable interest rates and the capacity of the road building industry to handle that front loading of repairs. But you'll see more funds devoted to maintenance as we move into the middle and latter part of the decade. I am also the county's representative to the 9-member Regional Transportation Authority Board. I serve on that board with the mayors of the 5 cities and towns, the chair of the Tohono O'odham Nation, the chair of the Pascua Yaqui tribe, and the governor's Southern Arizona representative to the Arizona State Transportation Board. We are responsible for making sure that the current RTA plan, which was passed by voters in 2006, is successfully completed. And we are also working to get an RTA next plan in front of you to cover the next 20-year period. And that plan for that election is going to be spring of 2025. The Regional Transportation Authority is funded by a 0.5-cent sales tax that is paid for by everybody in Pima County. And there are not going to be any state or federal funds that are coming into our area for anything other than highway maintenance. So if we want to expand roadways, if we want to expand transit, if we want to work on pedestrian and bicycling needs and all of the other areas of concern within our transportation infrastructure, we absolutely need to pass a new RTA plan when it's in front of us in the spring of 2025. The Regional Flood Control District is another very important department. If you've lived here for any length of time, what our winter and summer rains can do when our washes and rivers and arroyos start to flood. The Regional Flood Control District is responsible for maintaining all of those arroyos and rivers. And it is in the top 0.5% of rated agencies in the country, which means if you need to buy flood insurance, you can buy it at a much lower rate because of the high rating that the Flood Control District has been given by the Federal Emergency Management Administration. All of the libraries in the county are under the county's authority and are paid for by one of those 3 secondary property taxes I mentioned. That includes libraries within the boundaries of the cities and towns. And then the Pima Animal Care Center is responsible not only for the vaccination and adoption of pets, but is also responsible for animal control. Those are just some of the departments but they are some that we work with the most when we get constituent service calls. You can go to the next slide, Mike. Here are some big areas of concern and focus for us as a board and certainly for District 1. The county recently upgraded its economic development strategic plan, and we are working with the cities and towns and our regional economic development partners, such as the Chambers of Commerce and Sun Corridor, to put that plan into effect. We are trying to get more and more major employers into Pima County. Major employers are defined as employers that have 500 or more employees. But we also have a small business commission that works under the Economic Development Department. because small businesses in Pima County, just like around the country, are really the foundation of our local economy. I mentioned before roads and transportation, not only because of how much unincorporated land is within District 1, but also my role on the RTA board. Quality early childhood education. We are in the third year of providing scholarships to low-income families so that they can send their child to preschool. The average cost of preschool in Pima County is $800 a month per child. And if you are a family that is struggling with all of the other costs associated with life, you may not be able to send your child to preschool. And preschool is not a frill. It's not a luxury. It's not babysitting. It is exposing kids to literacy and numeracy so that they're ready for kindergarten. All we know about brain development tells us that those ages of 3 and 4 are absolutely critical. And we are not only working to get more kids into preschool, we're also working with the local United Way through a program called Accelerate Quality to increase preschool capacity. Because if we want more kids to go to preschool, then we need to increase preschool capacity. And the Accelerate Quality program, which again is run by our partner, the United Way, helps preschool providers to meet the standards set by the state of Arizona for any preschool provider. We helped 900 kids in our first year, 1,300 kids last year, and we're set to help 1,600 kids this year. We're paying for the first 4 years of the program through pandemic relief funds from the federal government, but we are going to use a small portion of the secondary property tax that funds the library district to pay for the program beginning in year 5 and moving forward. So our partners, who are mostly the K-12 districts, but also private preschool providers, know that there's a stable source of funding. And I tell people all the time, never tell anybody that elections don't matter. This program is evidence that they do. The preschool scholarships were passed by the board by a 3-2 vote. My opponent in the 2020 general election said that he was opposed to this program. So if he had won in 2020 instead of me, this program would not be in place. Homelessness and housing. It is true that there are a significant number of people, perhaps especially in the chronically homeless community, who are dealing with issues related to substance abuse or mental health. But that they are about 25% last I heard of the homeless population. The rest of the folks who are homeless, they're often homeless because they are dealing with the lack of supply in our community with regard to housing. And when there's a lack of supply, the cost goes up. My wife and I have twins who are adults and out of the house. I cannot believe what our kids pay for rent. When I think back to what we paid for rent before we were homeowners. And so the county recently recharged its Affordable Housing Commission, and it has not only representatives from all the supervisors, but also from all the jurisdictions, including the tribe and the nation, to work with our partners in the private sector to increase the stock of housing in Pima County, not just affordable housing, but workforce housing, the kind of home you might look at when you are looking at your first home, and also marketplace housing. When it comes to homelessness, most of the homeless encampments in the county are in our washes or arroyos. So actually the first department that deals with reports of homeless encampment in the county is the Regional Flood Control District. But it brings in, if necessary, the Sheriff's Department, and most significantly, our Community and Workforce Development Department that helps people who are experiencing homelessness know about some of the services that the county can provide that might help them to deal with their situation more readily. But we definitely need more emergency and definitely need more emergency and temporary shelter throughout the county, especially within the boundaries of the city. And we're working with our partners to not only expand that shelter space, but also make sure that folks have the wraparound services that they need to help them get out of the homeless population. Public safety. The Sheriff's Department has been dealing with a significant number of vacancies, as has the City of Tucson Police Department, as has the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and just about every other law enforcement entity in our area and around the country. Every pay increase that the sheriff and the county administrator have recommended to the board, we have passed unanimously so that we can try and help the sheriff to deal with some of the vacancies within his department. We also have just opened a transition center that is adjacent to the jail. It is run by county staff working in conjunction with pretrial services to provide folks as they are booked and are not being incarcerated, but are leaving the booking center. It provides them with information about services and supports that, again, might help to deal with the prospects of recidivism. I also always like to talk about, when I get to this item on the agenda, that the board, at the suggestion of the county administrator, did create a blue ribbon commission to look at the sheriff's recommendation that we have a new jail constructed. It is also, this blue ribbon commission is also supposed to make recommendations to the board about the current facility and any enhancements that might be made to the current facility. I think sometimes people think that the blue ribbon commission means that a new jail is a done deal. That absolutely is not the case. It is just one of the issues that they are looking at. I am a member of the state's County Supervisors Association. Every county supervisor is a member of the association, but I represent the county on the Legislative Policy Committee that meets during the legislative session to talk about bills that counties either want to support or oppose based on their impact on counties. There is one representative from each one of the 15 counties. We are a pretty even mix of Republicans and Democrats, but when we vote to oppose or support a bill that's moving through the legislature, our votes are almost always unanimous, because the interests of counties are the interests of counties. And by the way, counties are responsible for administering elections in Arizona. And anytime we have had a bill that comes before the legislature, and unfortunately, a couple of those bills have been sponsored by the Republican members of the legislature in LD 17 that seek to question or undermine the safety, security, and authority of counties with regard to the administration of elections in this state. We have voted to oppose those bills unanimously, including the Republican supervisors who serve on the Legislative Policy Committee, because all of us know that counties do an exceptional job of administering elections in this state. Ever since the election of Donald Trump, there have been allegations and accusations about the security of elections that have been bandied about recklessly, and counties, regardless of the political affiliation of their supervisors, are standing against those allegations and are also sharing facts with people about the administration of elections in our state. The Tucson water ruling, unfortunately, after decades of charging the same rates to everybody in the county in a service area that runs from Corona de Tucson to the village of Catalina, the city of Tucson passed higher rates on people who are Tucson water customers who live in the unincorporated county. They exempted Tucson water customers in Marana, Oro Valley, and South Tucson, on Pasquayaki or Tohono O'odham lands, on TUSD properties, but charged everybody else these higher rates. They did a cost of service study after the fact because their city attorney recommended that they do so. We tried very hard to negotiate with them, not only on the behalf of our constituents, but also on behalf of the county, because the county pays water rates in the unincorporated county. To no avail. And so we made the very difficult decision to sue the city on these rates, which were not reflective of the cost of service. The city requested a change of venue to Maricopa County. They were granted that change of venue, and a Maricopa County judge recently ruled on behalf of the county. We are in a period right now where we are waiting to see if the city will appeal. I certainly hope they don't. And once they make that decision, then we can start looking at issues that we get asked about in our office all the time, such as when are the water rates going to be rolled back, and if and when will people be reimbursed for the higher rates that they were paying. You can go to the next slide, Mike. These are some of the plans that we're working on at the county level. I mentioned that we just reauthorized, not reauthorized, but reconfigured our economic development strategic plan, and it did pass muster with the Federal Economic Development Administration. We are required, as is every county, to overhaul its and revise its comprehensive land use plan every 10 years. We have begun that process. The current comprehensive land use plan is referred to as Pima Prospers. I'd encourage you to get involved in the public process for revising the comprehensive land use plan, because it affects all of the codes and regulations dealing with residential and business development as a result. We have a sustainable action plan for county operations. That's what SAPCO stands for. It is designed to ensure that the county is a thoughtful user of water, of paper, of fuel, and each department has certain goals that they have to meet, and that is overseen by the county administrator and the deputy county administrator. I mentioned the Regional Transportation Authority, the current plan, and the new plan that we want to get in front of you. Although the county is not a water provider, we do have some water policy groups that are meeting. They are made up of staff members. They were formed by the county administrator to look at how we can work with the local water companies and the Arizona Department of Water Resources to conserve water within the Tucson Active Management area. We're also, the Regional Flood Control District is also part of these water policy groups, because they are working on retention and detention of stormwater. And the Regional Wastewater Department is also looking at ways that we can make use of reclaimed water and effluent. The Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation Department has a special revenue fund that is funded by user fees, and it is helping to fund a master plan for the improvement of some of our amenities and facilities within Parks and Recreation. And then the classification and compensation study, the board had not looked at the systemic classification and compensation of our close to 7,000 employees since 1957. And we are looking to lower both our vacancy and our turnover rates, because we want a workforce that wants to stay with the county long term. The ultimate beneficiaries of a workforce that feels well treated and well compensated, and that sees the county as an employer of first choice are our constituents, because those employees are responsible for providing the services and supports that the over 1 million people who live in Pima County depend upon. You can go, and so we put that study in place. We authorized that study back in 2021, got the results this year, and we've already put phase 1 and phase 2 of the classification and compensation study in place. I was a teacher and an administrator for close to 30 years before I ran for the board. So my staff knows that I love getting back in front of kids. And I was at a K-12 charter school about a year ago, talking with students in the auditorium. about local government and the role it plays in their lives. And because it was a K-12 school, you had elementary, middle, and high school students in this auditorium. So I'm trying to explain local government in a way that is understandable and appealing to the older kids and the younger kids. And when I got to question and answer time, this little third grade boy knew that political candidates run for office, and he was therefore calling them runners. And then he asked me this question that you see on this slide: why do all the runners hate each other? So that just knocked me back on my heels, really, because here you've got a kid who's 8 or 9 years old, and he's already picked up on the negativity and the divisiveness and really the toxic nature of our politics. So that's the one story. And the two commitments are one that I kept or tried to keep as both a parent and an educator, which is to remember that our kids are always watching us, and they're watching our actions, and they're listening to the words that we say, and they're learning from our examples. And so I want to always commit to you and commit to myself that I'm going to remember that our kids are always watching. And then the second commitment is to do what I can to not contribute to that negativity and divisiveness that young man had already seen. And I think all of us need to make that commitment as adults. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is our wonderful staff with the very alliterative sequence of names: Cammie, Kate, and Kim. Cammie and Kim both worked in other county departments before they came to District 1. Cammie for the Sheriff's Department, Kim for the Recorder's Office, and Kate has worked for a lot of nonprofit agencies throughout the county, including Primavera, Child and Family Resources, Emerge Center Against Domestic Violence, El Grupo Youth Cycling, Mobile Meals. So I really have a staff that knows the county and loves working with our constituents. And you can go to the next slide. And that is all of our contact information. And that is the end of my presentation. And I hope, Mike, that I have allowed plenty of time for questions that I've already seen in the chat and other questions that people may want to ask.
Barbara Warren, why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question for Supervisor Scott?
Rex, thank you for all the incredible work you're doing. It's really wonderful. I know that the county has had, before I say that, it's hotter and drier. You're dealing with water issues. The county's had a climate adaptation for several years and several iterations. I'm wondering what the county now is doing to specifically address climate change.
I think, Barbara, the main work that we're doing is through the Sustainable Action Plan for County Operations in terms of our own effects on climate. But as we move into the revisions of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, climate considerations will definitely be part of that work, as will making sure that the new version of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, just like the current one, is aligned with the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan and the associated conservation land system. We also work with the cities and towns on climate issues through the Pima Association of Governments and the Regional Transportation Authority Board. Really, I think in just about every area of county operation, including those where we're working with other jurisdictions, we are keeping in mind the impact that we have as a large workforce, as a large organization on the climate. And when it comes to our rules and regulations, we're trying to keep those in mind as well.
Are you dealing with your transportation system, electrifying as much as you can?
Yes. And in fact, if you go on the page on the website that describes the Sustainable Action Plan for County Operations, you will see the roadmap for electrifying the county's vehicle fleet.
Great, thank you.
Oh, and we also want to work with the state and with TEP and with local partners on increasing the number of EV charging stations and making sure that we're filling that gap, because a lot of the high poverty, low SES areas of the county don't have as many EV charging stations, and we want to look at how we might fill that void by putting some of those stations on county property.
And how about extreme heat protection for workers and for the population at large? Because it's getting hotter.
Yeah, definitely. And those protections, when it comes to the county workforce, we are always mindful of. But in terms of the private sector, that is usually a function of state government.
Thank you.
Or the federal government through the Occupational Safety and Health Administration or the Department of Labor.
Thanks for those questions, Dr. Warren. Let's bring up Susie Anderson and get a couple of those questions that were posed in the chat room real quick. So I'm going to add Susie here. Hi, Susie. We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have a comment from Amelia Kramer, who thanks you for supporting the NAACP's proposed legislation on bail reform. And then we have Bridget.
And I just want to say really quickly, the previous board passed a resolution supporting that legislation at the state level, and our board affirmed it. So both the previous board and our board are on record supporting that legislation.
Okay, and then Bridget Ricchetti wants to know how Pima County plans to manage budget once the federal COVID dollars are used.
Well, Bridget, if you go on the county administrator's website, you can see a breakdown of how we have used all of those funds. And what we have always tried to keep in mind with pandemic relief funds that came in during the tail end of the Trump administration and the beginning of the Biden administration is to not use short-term money for long-term needs. And I think you'll see when you look at the breakdown of how we've spent those monies that we've really tried to be mindful of that. We also work through the department's grants management and innovation department to ensure that we are complying with all federal requirements when it comes to making use of pandemic relief funds.
Thank you. And then Paul Stapleton Smith, to Amelia Kramer's comment above, would you explain the brilliant and innovative work of Dan Sullivan, Director of Pima County's Department of Community and Workforce Development and Staff?
Well, Paul, I really appreciate that question, because Dan and everybody on his team are just extraordinary. And if you visit no other webpage on the county website, visit the Community and Workforce Development Department page, because you'll be amazed at everything that they've done. To go back to Bridget's question, when we were charged, the county was charged with getting emergency rental assistance money out to landlords and tenants during the pandemic. That effort was and is headed up by the Community and Workforce Development Department. They have put in place an extraordinary program known as Community Navigators. And those navigators make anybody who comes to the county for a particular service, like say one of our early education program scholarships, the navigators say, well, yeah, your child is eligible for one of those early education program scholarships, and here are some other services that the county provides that you may not have been aware of, but we want you to be aware of. They also work with Job Path, and which has an extraordinary record dating back to the 1990s of getting kids and non-traditional students through Pima Community College and helping to pay for their costs during that time. I could probably do an entire presentation on everything that Dan and his team do, but and I'm sure I'm only mentioning just a few things that they do, but I'd absolutely visit their website and get acquainted with what their department does. And thanks for that question, Paul.
Let's see, one more question. What percentage, this is from Rod Norish, what percentage of the early childhood education need in Pima is being met by the scholarship program offered by Pima County? How much the overall need is not being met by any funding source?
So, Rod, if you go on the page on the county's website that's devoted to the PEEPS program, and that stands for Pima Early Education Program Scholarships, you will see a graph that looks like a thermometer, and it will show you the percentage of people who are going to preschool or having their needs met, not just by our early education program scholarships, but also the scholarships that are provided through the First Things First program that is funded by a tax on tobacco and was passed by voters in Arizona several years ago, and also by the state through the Department of Economic Security. By the way, we absolutely are going to need the state to go back to the level of funding that it provided to early education prior to the Great Recession, which, just like with K-12 education, it has never restored, because we are really going to be facing a childcare cliff when some of the pandemic relief funds that the state has relied upon for its not just preschool but childcare subsidies goes away. And you'll get an overview of the program and the amount of need that we're meeting on that page. But one of our guiding principles is that we need a state strategy for addressing preschool and childcare. And folks, it's not going to surprise you to hear this. We need more Democrats in the legislature to make sure that that strategy moves forward. We've got a terrific governor who understands the importance of preschool and childcare, not just to kids and families, but to our economy. Because if people can't send their kids to childcare or preschool, they can't work. But we need more allies for Katie Hobbs in the legislature, for the state to reclaim its role, its appropriate role in meeting all the childcare and preschool needs that we have throughout Arizona.
Thanks, Susie, for bringing those to our attention. If there are any other questions in the chat, let me know. We'll turn now to Jeannie Christie, who has her hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey Rex, good to see you.
Hi, Jeannie.
I just have a quick question. Could you give us a little bit more information on the flood control, the insurance for floods?
Sure. If you live in an area that is flood prone, you would have been notified by the Regional Flood Control District that you really should get flood insurance through the federal government, through one of the providers that works with the federal government. And if you are not required, but we're strongly encouraged to have flood insurance, you can get it at a reduced rate, because the Regional Flood Control District is, as I said during my presentation, in the top 0.5% of rated agencies around the country. They really are exceptional. And if you wonder if your home or property should be covered by flood insurance, contact the Flood Control District, and they'll be happy to help you.
Just
Great, thank you.
a quick
Because
follow. A quick follow up on that, Rex. I know that in some places around the country, it's becoming difficult to obtain such insurance
Yes.
against natural disasters. Have we had any instances of companies pulling out of the market here in southern Arizona as a result of climate change?
Not that the board has been informed of, but certainly when we meet on a quarterly basis with some of the departments that we work with the most, and that includes the flood control district, and they certainly are hearing from our constituents that rates are climbing just like they are for homeowners insurance overall.
Mhm.
I'd absolutely contact the flood control district if you have any concerns about a particular piece of property.
Yeah, because I live within walking distance of the Rito, and I have a small wash just to the west of me, which is a couple blocks, and then there's one to the east of me that's rather large. So I'm real concerned that they didn't contact me because I know the Rito flooded, and I think it was 83. But with our the climate crisis, things are changing,
Mhm.
and I'm real concerned about it.
Well, I'd absolutely call them, Jeannie. My understanding is that most of the homes that need flood insurance are either in or adjacent to an actual flood plain.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rex. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Let's turn to Steve Linder. I see you've unmuted yourself. Let's hear your question, Steve.
Hi, Rex. I'm very lucky to live in District One and be represented by you. Thankfully. But my question is really about the future. And I mean, have you identified any opposition candidates from the Republican Party that you think will run? I mean, I really cannot see seeing Ann Day or Pete Hirschberger type Republicans anymore. I'm more worried about Justine Woodsack type Republicans. I mean, do you know who your opposition would be, and also how can we best support you to make sure that you're going to continue to be our supervisor past 2024?
Well, I absolutely appreciate the question and the support, Steve. If you go on the elections department page on the county website, one of their links says current information. And if you go to that current information page and go down to 2024 election information, you will see the names of people who have filed statements of interest. That is the first step that you have to take to run for any county office. And there's a long list of people who have already filed statements of interest for not just the Board of Supervisors, but county-wide offices, constable, justice of the peace. They're all listed there. The only person other than myself who has filed a statement of interest in District 1 is my general election opponent from 2020, Steve Spain. As of now, he is the only Republican who has indicated that they're interested in running for the office. However, statements of interest are just starting to be filed, and actual petitions, nominating petitions, won't need to be filed until the spring of next year. So it's early in terms of people wanting to get in. I would be delighted to run against Mr. Spain again. He absolutely does not represent the interests or needs of the majority of the people in this county. He doesn't even represent the majority of the interests or needs of people in his party, because he won a four-way Republican primary in 2020 with 32% of the vote. And I won some areas where Democrats don't often win. And I think that's because he did such a thorough job of appealing to only a narrow band of the electorate.
Nice way to put it. Let's hear from Andrea Kennedy. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, Andrea.
Hi,
Hi,
Andrea.
Rex. It's good to see you.
Good to
So what
see
did you
you.
say? What did you say to that little boy? And when's your town hall tomorrow?
Well, you know what? I'm sure I was so flabbergasted by his question and the emotional impact of it
Never
that
prepared.
I'm sure I said, well, we need to set the right example as adults, and I'm sorry, we're clearly not doing that. So
Not the Democrats.
yeah, words to that effect, I'm sure, but uh, I think the more important thing is what we're all doing moving forward to not add to the examples that he so readily saw at such a young age. And then the town hall tomorrow is at 6 o'clock, and it is on the Pima Community College Northwest campus. That's near the intersection of Shannon and McGee. And Pima Community College Northwest is right next to the Northwest YMCA.
All right, I see we're coming up on 1 o'clock here. I
Thank
just
you.
have a brief question for
Sure.
you, Supervisor Scott. There was a recent little kerfluffle with the sheriff of our county threatening to pull security officers from the supervisor's chambers. Can you tell us what the background of that is, what the origin of that dust up was, and
Well,
when it was resolved?
there's things that I can talk about and things that I can't talk about because they were discussed in executive session. But the basis for the sheriff's reaction, and by the way, he has since pulled back that statement. He was upset with some of my colleagues, and I heard him say in a media interview that because he was upset, he overreacted and said that he was going to pull deputies away from supervising our meetings. He talked with our chair, Supervisor Grijalva. He also talked with the county administrator, and he pulled that back. He was upset with the majority of my colleagues who asked either the Attorney General or the Arizona Attorney General or the State Department of Public Safety to conduct an investigation of his department into internal actions of some of his staff when they were responding to an assault on another employee by a former sheriff's department sergeant who has since been fired and is facing both criminal and civil lawsuits. I was one of two supervisors who voted against that motion to have an internal affairs investigation, to request an internal affairs investigation from the Attorney General or the State Department of Public Safety. Supervisor Grijalva was the other one who voted against it because based on what I heard in executive session, I felt that action could have a negative impact on either the criminal case or the civil case. And that's really about as much of it that I can say because of the fact that it was discussed in executive session as legal matters always are.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the clarification.
You bet. You bet.
All right. With that, we're going to bring this meeting to a close. I want to thank Supervisor Scott for his wonderful presentation, informative and comprehensive, and clearly reflective of your history as an educator. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us on short notice. I want to acknowledge the fact that I only asked you on, I think it was Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's
you turned
true.
it around immediately and said, yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I'm always happy to be with DGT and always happy to do something on behalf of any of the folks in this meeting or any of your friends or family. If there's anything related to county government where you need assistance or support, please be in touch with me.
Thank you, Supervisor.